Welcome to the latest Preseen material for the strategic case study exam in the CIMA or CGMA qualification. Now, the latest Preseen case is called Cewmlator. Now, as always, this time I prepared a 200-page Preseen application note summarizing what you need to know in this industry. I would say that the very difficult part in this particular industry is all about the chemical stuff. Because it's all about the electricity stuff later on. So once I've done with that, I'll also go through from core activity A up to core activity E in the entire SCS syllabus. So, for example, I will tell you how to answer the questions like game theory. I will tell you how to recommend financing strategies, and so on and so forth, okay? With the predicted questions inside, also there will be attached mock exams available for you to practice on. Now, firstly, as always, I would like to draw your attention that the examining team specifically say you can make reference to current affairs. So this means that the real life cases that I will go through in my Preseen go through here, you can take them into your answer as long as you're answering the requirement. Of course, I will show you how later on. But first things first, let's look at the Preseen material. We are given the introduction before the electric cars, and then our company itself, and then all sorts of elements of our company. And finally, we also have got news story. Of course, news stories, per my experience, that the exam question scenarios may be basing on one of these stories. So make sure you're ready for that. And of course, for each of the story in turn, I will also guess what might come up later on. But first things first, we are told that Cewmlator is a quoted company for electric cars and buy rechargeable batteries. And of course, you're the manager, and it's a quoted company in a developed country, and the dollars are currency, and following is the IFIs. All right then. What I would do next, if you kindly turn to page number 3 of our Preseen application note, firstly, I will summarize what I just talked about. But more importantly, I would like to draw your attention to more of the details about this industry. Now, what do you think when you talk about electric car? Okay, I'm sure that I heard that you may shout, Tesla. Yes, you're right. But do you know that other companies nowadays also had their electric cars? Just step back and to think about it. What do you think? Electric car. It's that simple. Now, of course, it seems to me, or it seems to everybody, it's simple because we've got the battery, we've got a car, just combine them all together. All right, so that would be the electric car. But hold on a second. For the battery itself, whether you are developing your own battery or you're using the battery from the external supplier, what do you think? Now, a famous example from Chevrolet, back in 2020, it has got a particular model called Bolt. Now, this model, this electric car, actually catching fire, such as this. Wow, it's quite serious, isn't it? This model worked with the battery producer called LG firm. Wow, it's quite a famous company that manufacturing batteries. However, it failed. Well, hold on a second. You may think that why it failed? It's so strange. Isn't it a battery? Just insert that into a car. That would give me is the electric car. Well, let me tell you a story. the LG company really specialized in making batteries, but not for cars at that time. It's for mobile phones. It's for smaller items. So therefore, Cewmlator, this company, and the LG company has got different culture, different focus, different thought. One is focusing on the car durability, but one LG company is focusing on the battery density. So what that means is, one is focusing on, let's say, that the battery should be used at least for 10 years, for example. But the LG company may be making the batteries at that time, the targeting batteries, let's say, for 2 years. Now, it's a big gap between these two. But what actually caused this problem? I mean, shouldn't it sign a particular agreement about the partnership agreements that detailing the battery production requirements? Well, you're absolutely right there. They did sign this agreement. But the problem lies in the anodes being torn open. Now, let me explain to you what do I mean by anode. It's not a chemical class really, but I would like to explain a bit more about it in case that in the exam you may be seeing such terminologies. Now, anodes, I would like to imagine that as the warehouse. Now think about it. In a battery, how can we store electricity? Well, the answer for that is we need to use chemical. Now, of course, the chemical in this industry is called graphite. That chemical will store electricity when it is charging. Using this material and convert that into the chemical energy. So when it is not charged, which means discharged, we can then use that chemical energy and power it to the car. So that is what I mean by we've got the warehouse and storing the chemical energy from the electrical energy. When it is discharged, the warehouse would power the car. Okay, and that's the whole process. Well, hold on a second, that seems to be rather straightforward, isn't it? Well, the answer is yes, it is. However, the big problem is, well, yes, but we have to ensure that the anode itself is not torn open. Because if that's torn open, it's like the warehouse is torn open with cracks and holes on this wall, and then of course the materials will go out, which means leaks out. And of course it's like the gas leaked out, and when it faces with fire, which means facing or encountering the spark, it will explode. That is exactly the same problem when the car using these anodes inside, but subsequently torn open because of the different requirement or a big gap between these two companies. Okay, so we're managing it. So you may say that Cewmlator, if they can foresee this particular issue, they will not allow the user to use that battery for that long amount of time. For the LG company, on the other hand, at least they will need to buy insurance on that. So what happens is, in the end, the LG settled $1.9 billion to Cewmlator company, whereas for the Cewmlator company, on the other hand, it conducted the product recall of all the boat model. It's a significant loss, including the reputation damage, okay, to the company itself. So as you can see there, that it's not very easy that two companies working together is the partnership basis. Now, another story I'd like to tell you is all about Tesla. We all know Tesla. Now, Tesla back in 2013, it's approximately 12 years ago or something like that, that many cars caught fire. Now, what traditional car manufacturer would do when they are facing such issues is that they will accept investigation by the authority and then they will conduct the product recall. However, Tesla used the different approach. Now, Tesla analyzed that when the car, the underbody part, is quite low. So that's why when it's driving at high speed, maybe it is facing or encountering the road debris. So if that's the case, then having crashes with the object on road, that if the car is underbody part is too low, so it's very likely the battery itself is not protected, and that's why fire took place. And that's why what Tesla would do is to make sure that they would raise the underbody part. So when it is crashing with the object on the road, in essence, that the battery itself is protected to a certain extent. But what they did is not to conduct the product recall and to fix them on a mechanical basis. So what Tesla did later on is to push a mandatory over-the-air software update to their entire global cars, which means global fleet. And once they've installed that particular software update, the software would adjust the car by raising its underbody part and to solve this issue. And of course, by doing that, not using the old way, such as what Ford Pinto did back in 1970, conducted a product recall, and of course, it saved lots and lots of money. Now, the key issue that Tesla can do it is because it is using a dynamic and adaptable platform. This could be one of our potential investment projects on the exam day. So when you are facing that particular project, you can say that instead of doing some of the mechanical stuff, but now I can use software to adjust that stuff. So therefore, from a financial point of view, if I were to use the SFA tests, which means to see whether or not the project is suitable, feasible, acceptable, well, I will need to see, I can give clues about that, okay, on the exam day, for example. So the system itself is important. The first case told us the battery supplier is reliable, but it's not suitable. So that's the very, very tough stuff, okay, that we need to think about. The second thing is that the platform itself is so important to our company. Now, of course, another story about this industry I would like to tell you is all about Volkswagen. Now, Volkswagen at that time was very clever by introducing a particular new model called ID.3 to compete, for example, with other competitors such as Tesla company. However, it seems that something is not right, because instead of using traditional automotive model of using dozens of simple independent modules from computers from various suppliers, what Volkswagen did was that they've designed a customized, centralized software architecture in-house. It's just to be a single platform to solve everything. Do you think that's okay? Well, I imagine that it was okay, but actually it has so many bugs each and every day. Well, hold on a second. if you see there are a lot of bugs each and every day, what would you do? Well, if I'm the manager, I would like to postpone this project, but luckily they didn't postpone the project. Now the reason is they decided to speed up the introduction of such an electric car in order to avoid massive European Union carbon fines. Because currently, most of their cars are fuel powered. Alright, now the management decided that, okay, we'd like to fix the bugs each and every day, but let's speed up the process. But luckily, when Volkswagen produce all these cars, they can't be introduced to the market. And therefore, of course, suffers a huge loss from it. So remember, for the electric car, the key, it is not the engine, but it is the code. All right? So you need to think about the software stuff, and even the chemical stuff, of course. Now, another case I'd like to share with you is that because we are told that it's rechargeable, it's fine. We can also see there are a lot of charger, okay, on the roads nowadays. But guess what? Back in 2020, in America, of course, the electric vehicle ecosystem is quite good, except the fact that when you are facing with charger, there are so many problems. Now, the problem is miscommunication. So, for example, if you want to get your car charged, when you see the charge number 1, you can see that the screen is not responsive. Oh my God. Now, when it comes to the charger 2, for example, it starts working, but failed after 2 minutes. When it comes to the charger 3, you can see that you can't pay for it, which means the credit card reader is broken. So in essence, to this customer, I mean, according to the report, it's value chain. So for example, in this particular case, that everything is not right, is not coordinated among each other. So I would say that if you were to make sure such infrastructure is fine in this industry in order for your cars to be sold better, it's important that you need to solve this miscommunication problem. Now, I would say that a very good example that I can learn from would be from Tesla. Now, what Tesla done is that they've done with the supercharger network, they're coordinating all these parts together on their own, rather than separating them to the charging software designer, hardware company, network company, and payment processor. They've done this on their own to solve this problem. This could be one of the possible scenarios on the exam day that you can talk about when you are facing with the broken plug in this particular case. Now I will say that I've given you enough information to know the background of this case before we move on to the electric cars and so on and so forth. So be aware, at the strategic level, unlike in other levels, for example in the operational level, the strategic level case study really requires you to know the industry thoroughly, rather than doing the rote learning exercises by studying the past exam questions. It's more important that you apply your knowledge to see, allowing the markers to see your answer is making sense. And I look forward to your exam success very soon then, and I look forward to seeing you soon in the next part. Bye-bye.
APC, accounting for your future.